Thank you, Mr. President, members of the body. Various articles we read throughout local periodicals, national periodicals, different stories you see on the TV stations, news stations, you hear on various radio stations, talks about how this state has done really well economically over the last several years. In fact, I've spoken on this floor about during my time, and specifically over the last 10 years, how we have gotten so much better bond ratings. And when you read the various articles and reasons from Moody's and Fitch and Standard and Poor's, they will talk about the fact we have dealt with unfunded pension liability, that our structural imbalance has really changed, that we're not structural imbalance, we're not using one-time dollars to pay for recurring expenses, that we are making the appropriate investments, that we are creating a business environment and growing jobs. I think everybody who understands the business community and economics know that you have to create the dynamics for businesses to want to come here. You're seeing population loss in certain states, and you're seeing budgets in certain states, some Republican, some Democrat, that they're having real financial woes. And people moving out, and they're going to the places where jobs are being created. Well, I wanted to talk about that a little bit because I saw some articles and I saw some things that were attributed to various people and individuals that were upset by certain actions of their elected officials. Well, let me start with this. The governor, Governor Andy Beshear, I have no doubt was mixing some politics with his official duties as promoting this state when he was in Europe. But we've seen other governors, Republicans and Democrats, go all over the place. Far East, Europe, Canada, take your choice. They've done that. But let me tell you what I think this governor did. He went over as part of his official duties and promoted the state of Kentucky and the fact that we've done so well and that we are one of the growing economies, that we are one of the growing states. But let me say this about how it got done. In the various articles, and one of them just came from the Democrat Governors Association, a press release, talked about how this governor worked on HHRs, medical marijuana, sports betting, a couple other things, brought people together. And I actually did a little work with the senator from Bourbon on the medical marijuana bill. And I talked to him the other day. We sat in room 285 going through the bill line by line because I said I wasn't going to be for it, but if we're going to have a policy, let's have the best policy we can have. And I asked the senator from Bourbon, I said, did you ever get a call from the governor's office on that? He sponsored it, I think, for 3 years in a row. Never heard a single word from the executive branch. Talked to the senator from Jefferson 36, who was one of the leaders in this body, on HHRs with the former senator from Scott. And it was the gentleman from Oldham, the Speaker of the House, that was the moving force on HHRs. I asked the senator from Jefferson 36, did you all ever hear from the executive branch on that? Because if people remember in this body, it only passed in the last few days when we cut a deal to pass several bills at once to make sure it had the support of the body to do that, a budget bill, autonomous functioning vehicles, and a few other things. And so it passed. Senator Jefferson 36 said, never heard from the administration. Then we get to sports wagering. Same thing, I reached out to the people who worked on that, which one of them was the former senator from Scott. Didn't hear from the executive branch. Well, if you want to look and see when the trajectory of this state started changing and when we started making the investments in the unfunded pensions, when we started doing all the different things that create the economic dynamics, it really started in 2017. We started doing the necessary things to make sure that our bond ratings and this state was looked at differently. And I go back in the years here, and I think, what piece of legislation has been brought to you, me, the speaker, anybody else in the majority party, that this body or the body down at the other end of the building has passed? There's only been one. One. That one was on the SK Blue Oval Glendale project, which now 1,600 people have lost their jobs. We're going to have to look at clawing back close to $400 million in economic incentives. We signed NDAs, followed the governor's lead, and it got us into a quagmire. It's the only one I can recall now starting in 7 years. So when he goes to promote us, and I think that was great that he went and promoted the state of Kentucky. He is promoting the policies, the dynamics that we created because we set the policy. Here's something that just came out of the DGA. We get criticized because we don't fully fund education. Let me go to this quote that I'm sure he put out. Trying to find it. So people who don't think we have fully funded education, let me give you the release that they just made. One, he worked to lower taxes. He vetoed a bunch of the bills that lowered taxes. Some of my colleagues in the opposite party actually spoke against it, and then he signed one bill that lowered taxes. But then the other part of this is, when anybody wants to criticize us for not fully funding education, in his release from the Democrat Governors Association, he takes credit that we have now fully funded education. So all the people who want to report that we haven't fully funded education, this governor, in his own statement from the DGA, says we have. Thank you, Mr. President.